They saw a woman on the throne and, frankly, they smelled blood in the water. Within months, 3 kings and even a prince-archbishop agreed to slice her sprawling lands into neat portions, as if the entire Habsburg realm were just a Sunday roast ready for carving. The new Empress. She was 23, short on cash, even shorter on allies, and, according to pretty much every betting man in Europe, about to lose absolutely everything. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly fathom, was that Maria Theresa had already decided she would rather bury her crown in the ground than ever hand it over.
If you're returning to the Classic Masterworks channel, welcome back. If you are new, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you will be made aware of our latest content. Now, on with the story.
So, how does a bankrupt 20-something with literally no military experience stare down the combined armies of Prussia, France, Bavaria, Spain, Saxony, and Piedmont, and still wind up with an empire larger than the one she inherited? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Stick around. The answer is equal parts pure, unadulterated stubbornness, some truly brilliant paperwork, and one speech that still gives Hungarian schoolkids goosebumps. When Emperor Charles VI died in October 1740, he left his daughter 2 critical things: a stack of fancy treaties called the Pragmatic Sanction and a treasury so empty the mice had probably unionized and gone on strike. The sanction was supposed to be her ironclad guarantee, meant to secure Maria Theresa's undivided inheritance. Every major European power had signed it, pledging their word. Problem is, parchment doesn't stop artillery shells. The moment the old man was cold, the kings started shrugging off their signatures like mere rain from a greatcoat, revealing their true intentions. It was a betrayal on a truly continental scale. Frederick of Prussia struck first. He wasn't subtle about it. He wanted Silesia, today a chunk of southwest Poland, and he wanted it badly. Why? Because it spun linen, mined gold, and, most importantly, it conveniently sat between Berlin and his grand dreams of Prussian greatness. His army crossed the frontier in December 1740, moving with brutal efficiency, and in a mere 6 weeks, the rich province was gone. Vienna had virtually no troops to stop him. Maria Theresa, after all, had never commanded anything larger than a palace ball, let alone an army. She was a ruler born into a world of courtly intrigue, not battlefield tactics. Losing Silesia was terrible PR, a massive blow to her prestige, but it wasn't fatal, yet. Then Bavaria's elector, Charles Albert, decided to get in on the action. He dusted off a dusty family tree, claiming that Austria actually belonged to him. France, always happy to weaken a rival Habsburg, backed him with mountains of cash and regiments of soldiers. Spain joined, hoping for colonial concessions. Saxony wanted a slice of Bohemia, Piedmont, a lucrative trade corridor. By spring 1741, the map of Europe looked less like a collection of nations and more like a school of piranhas circling a flailing calf, ready to tear it apart. The young Empress was truly alone. Maria Theresa's coronation in June definitely lacked the usual sparkle of crown jewels. Most of them, embarrassingly, had been pawned off to keep the government afloat. But she showed up anyway, visibly pregnant with her 4th child, and delivered what might have been the shortest, fiercest inaugural address ever given in Vienna. "I have no sword, but I have a heart, and it belongs to Austria." The line played incredibly well at home, rallying some much-needed local support. Abroad, however, it was largely mocked as mere girlish theatrics, another sign of her perceived weakness. How could a woman, and a pregnant one at that, possibly lead an empire in wartime? Her one untested, and frankly, rather unruly ally was Hungary, a proud, fiercely independent kingdom that respected only demonstrable strength. In September, she made the desperate journey to Pressburg, modern-day Bratislava, climbing the castle hill in pouring rain, and addressed the Hungarian Diet. She spoke in Latin, because it was the one language both the proud Magyar nobles and the Habsburgs pretended to master. She didn't just ask, she pleaded for troops, money, and most importantly, their trust. Legend claims she held her infant son, Joseph, aloft and cried, "I am a mother seeking aid for my children." Whatever her exact words, the effect was electrifying. The Diet rose as one, sabers flashing, and shouted the old battle cry, "Vitam et sanguinem." Our life and blood. They promised 80,000 soldiers. She actually got 60,000, but it was enough, absolutely enough, to pivot her empire from desperate defense to active survival. It was a moment that changed everything. Back in Vienna, Maria Theresa, working tirelessly alongside a brilliant Silesian exile named Count Friedrich Wilhelm von Haugwitz, began drafting something truly revolutionary, Europe's first modern military budget. And here's the kicker. It taxed nobles at the same rate as peasants, at least in Austria proper and Bohemia. This wasn't just about money, it was a radical shift in power, breaking centuries of aristocratic privilege and centralizing control. Under Haugwitz's shrewd guidance, she systematically centralized military administration, creating a professional standing army that eventually topped 100,000 men. These soldiers weren't just conscripts, they were drilled by Prussian deserters who knew their ex-king's playbook inside and out. For the first time in Habsburg history, regiments received standard uniforms, standard muskets, and, crucially, for morale, standard pay delivered on time. This wasn't just about fighting a war, it was about building a modern state capable of sustaining one. The fighting raged on. In 1742, Frederick crushed the Austrians at Schottositz, a painful defeat, but Maria Theresa, ever defiant, simply refused to negotiate a permanent peace. She wouldn't give up. In 1743, her newly reformed army, surprising everyone, turned the tide at Simbach, forcing Bavarian troops back across the Inn River. A year later, in 1744, France took Prague, seemingly a major victory, only to lose it again to a furious Hungarian-led counterattack that saw the enemy flags hauled down and Austrian colours raised before the ink on French victory proclamations had even dried. Then, in 1745, at Soa, Frederick won tactically, yes, but he retreated strategically. He'd bled too many irreplaceable veterans, and the cost of victory was becoming too high. Europe started whispering, hesitantly at first, that the Empress might actually hold her ground. Could this woman truly be unbeatable? While her armies learned to march in step, her envoys, under her astute direction, learned to speak the language of pure self-interest. Britain, ever pragmatic, wanted a continental buffer against France. Maria Theresa cleverly offered the Netherlands a barrier fortress chain, a strategic quid pro quo. Russia, always wary of Prussian expansion, feared Frederick's growing power. Vienna hinted at a joint partition of some territory, a partition nobody actually needed to execute, but just enough to keep St. Petersburg chatting and off balance. By 1746, the once solid coalition against her was fracturing, showing cracks. France, sensing a better opportunity, drifted toward a separate, more profitable war with Britain overseas, leaving Maria Theresa with fewer enemies to face directly. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle in 1748 finally ended the formal War of Austrian Succession. On paper, Austria lost only Silesia and a sliver of Italy, a significant loss, to be sure, but a far cry from the complete dismemberment her enemies had envisioned. In reality, Maria Theresa had preserved every other province, strengthened her army considerably, and taught Europe a harsh, unforgettable lesson. Habsburg lands could be attacked, yes, but they could not be digested. Frederick, ever the grudging admirer, kept calling her that archbitch, a testament to his frustration, yet he never again tried to swallow Vienna whole. Her defiance had earned his respect, however begrudgingly. Peace gave her breathing room, and Maria Theresa used it to transform her empire. She systematically standardized laws across her diverse lands, merged the Austrian and Bohemian chancelleries to create a more unified administration, and, perhaps most radically, founded the Theresianum. This wasn't just a school, it was a civil service academy specifically designed to train commoners for government roles, a truly revolutionary concept when most administrators simply inherited their desks. She also cracked down on frivolous coffeehouse gossip, banned the horrific practice of witches' trials, a surprisingly progressive move for the era, and, with an almost unheard-of pragmatism, ordered midwives to wash their hands. These might seem like small moves, but they saved thousands of lives long before germ theory was even a twinkle in anyone's eye. Her reforms were about making the empire work better, from top to bottom. The 7 Years' War began in 1756, and yes, it was partly Maria Theresa's relentless attempt to win back Silesia. But this wasn't just a rematch, it was a complete diplomatic revolution. This time, France, her former archenemy, fought on Austria's side, a truly astonishing alliance. Russia marched west, its vast armies threatening Prussia, and Sweden even tagged along, hoping for German ports. It looked like a checkmate for Frederick, until 1762, when Russia's new Tsar, Peter III, a bizarre and obsessive admirer of Frederick the Great, abruptly withdrew from the war, handing Prussia a last-minute, miraculous reprieve. Maria Theresa had to accept the status quo, the painful reality that Silesia was gone for good. But her army had fought Prussia, one of Europe's most formidable military machines, to a standstill, and her economy, despite the immense strain, stayed afloat, no small feat when every harvest seemed to burn in the flames of war. She never regained Silesia, and that surely stung until her dying day. Yet, by 1763, no major European treaty could be signed without Vienna's signature. Her husband, Francis I, was Holy Roman Emperor in name, but everyone knew she was the empire in practice. She rewrote school curricula, introduced potato fields that saved countless peasants during famines, a quiet, yet profound, act of governance, and, let's not forget, raised 16 children, 2 of whom would become emperors themselves, and one, her youngest, Marie Antoinette, would become a tragic queen in France. Her legacy wasn't just about battles, it was about building a better, more resilient empire for her children and her people. If you're enjoying this incredible story of stubborn survival, of a woman who simply refused to quit, hit that like button so the algorithm knows you want more history that doesn't flinch from the truth. Maria Theresa died in November 1780, aged 63, wearing the simple habit of a Carmelite tertiary, a testament to her deep personal piety. Europe's kings, many of whom had once plotted her ruin and laughed at her inexperience, attended her memorials in full regalia. Why? Because protocol demanded it, yes, but also because they genuinely feared what her successors might do if slighted. In her 40-year reign, she had doubled the size of the bureaucracy, tripled military efficiency, and proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that legitimacy rests less on gender or inherited privilege than on sheer, undeniable results. She wasn't just a ruler, she was a state builder. So, the next time someone claims power is simply about birth, about gender, or about the sheer size of your kingdom, remember Maria Theresa. Remember the 23-year-old who lost her richest province on day one, faced down an entire continent of smug, opportunistic monarchs, and still walked off with an empire not just intact, but stronger than before. They saw a woman and smelled weakness. Maria Theresa answered with a crown forged in fire, meticulous paperwork, and an almost superhuman refusal to quit. Not bad for someone who started with nothing but a fancy title and a mountain of debt, huh? History is full of underdogs who absolutely refused to stay down. Subscribe and watch the next video to meet another ruler who turned insult into empire. Because the past is packed with comeback stories that put Hollywood to shame.